Oh, I haven't given myself much room here. Over the last 3 months, I've been living with Honda's smallest SUV, and I can't help but feel like it's changed me. You see, some cars are built for speed, some are all about space, and some are just built for fun. But can a car make you a more relaxed and more patient human? Because I'm about to hand the keys back to this compact SUV, and I can't help but feel like it's changed me.
Okay, that might have been a glowing introduction, but truth is, there are some things about this Honda HR-V that grind my gears. But first, what is this car? The HR-V is Honda's smallest SUV and comes with 4 seats. Yes, only 4 seats. And I'll tell you why that is in a moment. It competes with cars like the MG ZS, Hyundai Kona and Mitsubishi ASX, to name a few.
But all those competitors and more outsell the HR-V by a significant margin. So why isn't it more popular? Well, it has a slightly higher starting price, but could there be other reasons? Let's cover off the range, which we can do pretty quickly because there's only 3. 2 hybrids and a petrol. This one is the petrol and it's called the HR-V VIX. It sits at the very bottom of the range and is currently priced from $34,900 drive away. You'll have to spend at least another $5,000 to jump into one of the hybrid models, but for a base model, this one is pretty well equipped.
Honda covers the HR-V with a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, and servicing is due every 12 months, which is pretty standard, or 10,000 kilometres, which is not as common as most rivals that stretch that kilometre distance to 15,000 Ks. Each of the first 5 services come out at $199 per visit.
Honda gave the HR-V a light facelift in the second half of 2024, but nothing really changed for this base model except for the addition of this darkened upper lip.
Standard features include 18-inch alloy wheels, dusk-sensing LED headlights, and tinted rear windows. There aren't many exterior colour options, and in fact, there are only 3 for this base model. But I'm a big fan of this slate grey hue, even if my dad says that it looks like undercoat or primer.
Every version of the HR-V comes powered by a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine mated to a CVT automatic. They're all front-wheel drive as well. But unlike hybrid models, this base petrol comes with no electric assistance, and as a result produces a measly 89 kilowatts. Honda's average combined fuel consumption claim for this car is slightly lower than direct petrol-powered rivals from MG, Hyundai and Mitsubishi. Before we get into it, let me tell you, this car has given me the most static electric shocks of any car I've ever driven. It's painful. Just about every time I've driven it, I get out and zap as soon as I touch the door. I've tried different things. I've tried clothing because I thought maybe it was my big puffer jacket. It's not jeans or activewear or anything like that. It just keeps happening. I've even tried grounding myself on the glass, which apparently works if you get out, touch the glass for a bit to ground yourself and then close the door, but it still gives me a little bit of a shock. It is a little bit less, but yeah, it's still there. I even almost went to the point of getting one of those silly looking static straps for the back of the car that dangle onto the ground. But I figured I need to find out what the cure is or what the reason is that I keep getting electric shocks, and I think I've worked it out. This seat material. It's got to be this, because if I rub against it now, get out and touch the door, I'll get an electric shock. I just did it before. So it's the seats. I want to know, have you ever had a car that you've been constantly zapped in? Let me know in the comments what the car was.
Oh, I got another one, secondary.
But anyway, when I first hopped in the HR-V, I thought it was pretty boring and bland. It's all black on black, hard plastics and cloth material. But honestly, the simplicity of the controls and the layout has really grown on me, and I think it's just easy. It's just an easy car to get in and just everything's right there. Admittedly though, I've been living with this in Canberra during the winter months, and I've got to say heated seats would have been a really lovely addition. It is a base model though, so I'll forgive it for that. And the heater is pretty bloody good once it warms up. Despite the lack of luxuries here, there's soft touch points where your elbows and stuff are going to sit, and the steering wheel feels pretty nice. I will say this cloth upholstery, besides the static shocks it might be giving me, is pretty nice to live with too. It's a material that's sort of scratchy, but not scratchy against the skin. And it's random, but the reason I'm telling you that is because it's really surprisingly easy to vacuum. I've had the dogs in the back quite a lot, so I've had to vacuum all the dog hair out, and you know, you just get food and whatever else you're doing in your car stuck in these little crevices and things. But they don't have these deep sections, and I don't know, they're just easy to vacuum, which I know is random, but that was something that I quite liked. I will just say as well, the driver's seat feels like it's perched higher up than it maybe needs to be. It's manually adjustable, and obviously it can go higher, but you can't go any lower than that low setting. Even still, there's plenty of headroom here, so people of most heights will probably be fine. Another thing I will mention, the steering wheel is both height and reach adjustable, which is nice. The driver's seat itself though feels like it could sit lower. This is its lowest setting, so I still feel like I'm perched up kind of high for my preferences, but each to their own, I guess. I just drove this car from Canberra to Melbourne a couple of days ago, and I spent 6.5 hours behind the wheel. And I've got to say, the seats are not my favorite. They just need more lumbar support. For a small SUV, the storage options in here are pretty decent. I found these trays pretty useful. I put my phone up here most of the time. There's another tray down here. Cup holders. There's some door pockets as well, so you can put a drink bottle down there. These other storage, like lidded areas, like the center console and the glove box, are pretty small, so you can fit tissues, and that's about as deep as it goes, if you can see the size of my hand. Not very deep. This is the same. You can fit a few other knickknacks for snacks on the run to clean your hands. You're not snacking on that, by the way. You're cleaning your hands after the snack. Amongst the user's manual, there's not much else room besides baby wipes and maybe some utensils for the snacks. A lot of cars have a glasses holder up here in the roof, which comes in pretty handy, but this one doesn't have one, so I've been putting my sunnies in here. Now for tech. The HR-V isn't fitted with the latest and greatest in terms of technology or infotainment screens, but it's nice to know that even the base model doesn't miss out on the touchscreen or what the others get. So all of the HR-V range gets this same 9-inch central screen, and I like it. It's not so small that you've got to sort of squint to see what's on the screen. All the prompts and the font is quite big. The screen itself is pretty responsive. Graphics are not too bad, and there's plenty of different options on there as well. So yeah, I like that. There's also this climate control panel down here, and I like the fact that there's physical buttons and dials for the climate controls. Something I did notice a lot though is when you're shuffling between this center button to choose where the air's coming from, your feet or up here or the windscreen, you've got to be really sensitive or precise with this knob. If you're heavy-handed and you're just like that, the clicks between each click are really small, so you've just got to be sensitive with the knob, I think is probably the only way to describe it. The other thing I noticed, only a couple of weeks ago actually, because it was at night time, I noticed when I was moving the temperature dial, the little ring behind the LED ring behind the knob changes color. It goes red or blue when you go colder or hotter, which, I mean, it's cool that it's there, but what's it there for? Because you can see the numbers, you know that you're going hotter or colder. Why does it light up?
Navigation, digital radio, Bluetooth, and wired Android Auto come standard. However, Apple CarPlay can be used wirelessly. And I usually don't like to use CarPlay without a cable because it can often randomly cut out and lose connection, but not once did that happen in the Honda. You also get a pair of USB ports up front, one USB-A and one USB-C.
In keeping with its entry-level roots, this HR-V is also fitted with a pretty basic instrument cluster. It is digital and you get a few little customization options, but there's really no sort of customization in terms of you've got the two dials on either side that stay there permanently, and then you can flick between a few different options, but they come up rather small inside a tacho, so you can't really change the whole look of the screen, but that's fine. I mean, I've found this pretty good.
I will admit this little SUV's front parking sensors have been very handy when navigating tight drive-throughs or swinging into a tight parking spot. The quality of the reverse camera is pretty good too, but not the best in the business. The HR-V was awarded a 4-star ANCAP safety rating back in 2022, which it holds today. And it's worth pointing out that while the HR-V is fitted with several important safety features and driver aids, there are some key things missing from this base model, such as blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert.
Honestly, I didn't spend much time back here, but my dogs did, and they really enjoyed themselves. But before we talk about these magic seats, I'll give you a bit more background on the seating. So This is a 4-seater, like I mentioned before. Because this middle seat isn't fitted with a child top tether anchorage point, by ADR requirements, that means you can't put a seatbelt in this position. So yeah, that's why it's a 4-seater. Even still, amenity is pretty good. These cup holders here, you've got this armrest, but it sits really low. So unless you're a kid that sits down here, it's not gonna be very comfortable because it's way down there. So you're gonna have to be like that if you're an adult. If you are an adult though, there's heaps of space back here, and you'll see in a second, that's probably why the boot is so small, because they've put these rear seats way back so there's so much space back here. But it's a good thing if you're gonna be sitting back here. Yeah, cubbies down there, some storage. There's those cup holders here. There's more cup holders here. So amenity is pretty good. Not much in the way of storage unless you use this seat back pocket on the passenger seat. But yeah, overall, I think 4 seats is probably enough for most people. Think about it. Do you really use all 5 seats in your car? I certainly don't have that many friends. Now, the magic seats, these are nothing new. Honda's been doing it for years in several different models, but this is, as I said, my first time living with them. They're so handy. I will admit though, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to work out that you had to bring that little lever down. You got to get it in the right position to lock. Oh, well, see, this is why I had trouble. I was like, you can't sit them up, so how am I going to put my dog here? But, oh, it's gonna make a fool out of me now. You've got to push it right up and then put that down. Maybe the car's the fool. I don't know. See, this is what I had an issue with. So that goes down and locks it into place, right? You bring it up, and this is what I had to do quite a few times. That's weird. Let me try with this other seat. I haven't given myself much room here. Oh, okay, this is exactly what happened. I've got it, sorry. These headrests, for whatever reason, need to be down. I think they get in the way of the seat base once it's up. Okay, headrests down, right? Put this up, put that down, it's locked. Okay, that's why it took me so long, and there you go, I didn't even learn my lesson the first time. Ta-da! Dog space, great.
Overall, the second row brings plenty of versatility, but it would be nice to have some power outlets. Again, the lack of a 5th seat could rule this out for small families, or I guess people with more than a few friends.
Well, when it comes to compact SUV boots, the Honda's isn't class leading by any means. It measures up at 304 litres, and that's smaller than all the rivals I mentioned before. So Mitsubishi, MG, Hyundai, all of their compact SUVs have a larger boot than this. Even still, I reckon that this is perfectly suitable for singles, couples, even probably small families, because there's a decent amount of room here. I managed to fit a large suitcase with room to spare. Other things like weekends away, you can fit pretty much, I don't know, 4 bags depending on what size they are, and then if you want to put them on top, do what you need. But you've also got those magic seats, so if you haven't got people in the back, there's lots of options. These seats fold flat as well, so you've got even more space. I really like this cargo blind too that kind of just is attached to the boot lid, so it goes up and it's not in the way covering things, but then it's still hiding what you've got in the boot when you're parked somewhere. Another thing, under the boot floor, which my cameraman will be very happy that I'm mentioning, I thought this didn't come with a tyre repair kit, which it's supposed to. It doesn't have a spare tyre or a space saver. And I got in here and I thought, there's all these little cubbies under here, where's the spare tyre kit? It doesn't have one. Wrong, it has one, and it's hidden in here, which is actually really clever. This comes off, and then you've got your spare tyre inflator kit and your jack in there too. I wouldn't have known, and in fact I didn't know. Thanks, Andy.
A bag hook and a pair of lights are nice additions to the boot, and I loved the handy pockets on either side for smaller grocery items.
All right, let me tell you about what this car has been like to live with from the driver's seat. The HR-V is about as slow as a wet week. But you know what? It's forced me to slow down, take stock of my life, and just relax. You just can't be in a hurry in this car. Okay, this car can hurry it up when it needs to, but the CVT is really loud under heavy acceleration, so if you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry, you're going to be doing it very loudly. The HR-V feels a lot better suited in city and suburban sort of environments rather than tootling down the freeway, which it can still do happily, of course. And trust me, I've done a fair bit of overtaking in this car, so I know that when it needs to get up and go, it can. It's just a bit loud.
Something you might struggle to ever do in this car is brake traction, thanks in part to good levels of grip from its Michelin tyres. While it's not fast, the HR-V feels tied down when cornering more enthusiastically. But that said, its rear torsion beam suspension setup can feel a little harsh over bigger hits and bumps in the road. For the most part though, it manages to smooth out smaller kinks. All in all, there's a solidity to the HR-V, both in terms of its materials, but also in the way that it's built, and that's comforting.
There are a few different drive modes, but they're a little different to most other cars. So you can use sport mode by shifting the gear stick from drive to S, which is sport. And all it does is lift the revs. It doesn't change chassis dynamics or anything like that. So it's just a rev picker-upper. And I reckon I've touched it 3 times while I've had this car. There's just no point for me because it just picks up the revs, sounds even more gruff than it already does. And yeah, it might make hitting peak power or getting to peak power a little bit quicker because the revs are a little higher already, but it still takes a while and it's just not any sportier or more enjoyable to drive in sport mode to me, so I haven't bothered. There is also an Eco button, which is just down here, and it's Econ, and it's a little green button. When you pop it on, all it really does is dampens the throttle and makes it feel more doughy and I guess unresponsive, and that is also not very enjoyable for me to drive, so I just switched that off. Again, I haven't really touched it, to be honest with you. In terms of ride comfort, it's pretty good news too, and I think where most people are going to be driving this car, like around the city or suburbia, you're not going to have any sort of issues. It's only when you start to hit more like rough country roads or broken roads that it can start to feel a little too firmly sprung and the passengers are kind of getting shaken up a bit and banging and crashing. The suspension isn't loud or anything, but it's just just bouncing in and out of things like breaks in the road, and it feels like a firm kind of hit and it's a little bit uncomfortable. I touched on the noise before, but something else I noticed during my time with this car is that it's kind of loud in the cabin in terms of road noise. And I feel like it could do with a bit more sound deadening. And that might also be the reason why, seriously, everyone that I call has an issue with the Bluetooth, I'm guessing with the microphone in this car, because they can't hear me properly. And a lot of them, or if not all of them, have said that it sounds like I'm speaking to them underwater or with a paper bag over my head or something of that derivative. I don't know. It's got to be something to do with the microphone, which I reckon is mounted behind this grille up on the roof here, which is, same as most cars. They're mounted usually somewhere up here. But yeah, I don't know why it's such an issue. I mean, it doesn't bother me because I can hear them perfectly well, but yeah, that's a common complaint in this car. The HR-V has a smaller fuel tank than many of its rivals. It's just 40 litres, and that probably doesn't sound like a big deal because small cars have small fuel tanks most of the time, and whoop-de-doo. The only reason I mention it is because I noticed that I had to fill it up a lot when I was doing longer drives, which again probably sounds like a silly argument. Of course you got to fill it up if you're driving a lot. But I feel like I had to fill it up more often than I've had to fill up other small cars on the same trips. So between Sydney and Canberra, or Canberra and Melbourne, for example, the Sydney to Canberra I've done multiple times in this car, back and forth, back and forth. I just felt like I was filling it up a lot and I thought, am I going crazy? And no, it has got a smaller fuel tank than most of its rivals. In terms of fuel efficiency, we managed to get it down to 6.7 litres per 100 Ks, so we didn't quite match Honda's claim of 6.2 litres. But I mean, 6.7 is not too far off, and it's sat there for pretty much the whole 3 months, so 6.7 litres, which it's still showing now. So that's our fuel economy. Maybe I could have got it down by using that Eco or Econ button, but I don't need to go any slower than I'm already going, so there's that. As I mentioned before, the driver's seat feels like it sits a little high in this car, but there is a positive to that, and that is that vision is really good. So you can see out pretty much every direction really easily. There's lots of generous glass work, and yeah, nice and easy to see out of. The only thing I will mention though is the C-pillars are quite chunky. They're not huge by most car standards, but they're chunkier than some, and that hinders a little bit of vision out the rear edges, and you don't get blind spot monitoring on this base model car, so it just means that you've got to check your blind spots extra than you would with a car that has blind spot monitoring. Not that you should be relying on that anyway. Alright, so the HR-V is slow and a little boring, but it's not really trying to be anything else, and for that you kind of have to admire it. Some of the things I didn't like over the course of the last couple of months. Obviously, the price is a little higher than most of its rivals, and you've got to take into account that it only has 4 seats, while most of its rivals have 5. The electric shocks, of course, also bothered me pretty much on a daily basis. And the headlights, they're not super bright, which is, I guess, okay around town if you're in suburbia with street lamps everywhere or sort of lighting around, but on some of the more country back roads that I've been on in my time with it, you really notice how dimly lit the headlights are. So yeah, that was something that I didn't enjoy as much. Some of the things I really liked about this car, well, one of them is definitely those magic seats. And I know it sounds like marketing hoo-ha or jargon, but they're actually really handy. And as I said, this was my first time living with the magic seats. I can't even tell you how many times I used them. I had boxes that wouldn't fit in the boot that I put in the back, and the dogs definitely, for sure, liked that back seat better than being put in the boot or sitting on the back seat, because sometimes they struggle for headroom, especially our big dog struggles for headroom if we put her on the back seat. But lifting those seats up, she was on the floor, so there was plenty of room around her. Yeah, I think she just had a much better time. The adaptive cruise control, that was another thing that I liked. It just seems to be really nicely tuned in this car. Sometimes you get into a car and you set the adaptive cruise and you're going down the freeway and it'll start slamming on the brakes as soon as it sees another car. This one just eases off, and it's just a more, yeah, I guess calm sort of system, and it's nicely tuned, or calibrated is probably a better word. And the final thing is how easy it is to drive, and that's something that I keep coming back to. The feeling of simplicity, the feeling of ease, that's just what this car screams to me. And maybe it's because it is a little more basic and doesn't have all the latest tech. And to be honest, that's the feeling I keep coming back to with this car. It's just simply easy to live with.
In a world of chaos, this car to me represents simple motoring. Bland as it may be, its calm, composed nature is actually kind of charming. Yes, it's more expensive than some of its rivals, and yes, it only has 4 seats while other small SUVs squeeze in 5. But before you cross the HR-V off your list, it's worth considering how often you really use that 5th seat.
Well, after almost 8,000 kilometres, this is an easy car to recommend. So, has Honda's smallest SUV actually made me a better person? Probably not, but it's certainly made me a more patient and more relaxed driver. Yep, I could happily keep living with this car. Thanks for watching. We've also put 2 of Honda's larger SUVs up against each other, so if you think this HR-V is a little too small, make sure you check out our comparison between the ZR-V and CR-V. All right, we'll see you on the next one.